When he said those words, everyone at the table laughed. Everyone except her. That moment didn't just break her heart. It rewired it. This opening drops the viewer straight into tension and humiliation, sparking empathy and curiosity immediately. Key storytelling triggers. Noted in your uploaded Edutainer's Week 5 to 6 file, which explains how emotional activation drives retention. The night was drenched in gold. Strings of fairy lights glimmered across the yacht's deck, their reflection rippling on the dark Dubai Marina waters. The air hummed with champagne laughter, the low throb of Arabic house music, and the scent of oud mingling with expensive perfume. Layla stood near the railing, her sketchbook clutched to her side like a secret. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. She preferred the solitude of her Beirut studio, where the world was just fabric, form, and silence. But tonight was different. Her client, Khalid Al-Rashid, the billionaire philanthropist with a smile that made headlines, had insisted she attend his charity gala in person. It was supposed to be her moment. Her design, a satin ivory gown, was displayed on a mannequin under soft light, shimmering like moonlight on water. It was elegant, daring, and, most importantly, hers. When guests praised it, Khalid smiled indulgently, as if the creation were his own idea. Then came the moment. "Layla," he called out, his voice smooth, carrying easily across the crowd. "You designed this masterpiece, didn't you?" She nodded, feeling her pulse quicken. "Beautiful work," he said, raising his glass. "But tell me," his grin widened, "do you think you could fit into it?" A pause. The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but sharp, slicing. Layla froze, every sound around her stretching thin and distorted. For a heartbeat, she couldn't move. Someone covered their mouth to hide a chuckle. Another whispered. Khalid's friends laughed the loudest, like he'd just said something clever. And then, the line that branded itself into her memory, "If you fit in that dress, I'll marry you." The words hit her harder than she expected, not because she wanted his approval, but because everyone else did. Her lips curled into a polite smile. She even laughed, softly, as if it didn't matter. But her knuckles whitened around her glass. Inside, something broke, and in that breaking, something else was born. Not anger, not revenge, something quieter, sharper, a vow she left before dessert was served. The night air cool against her skin. Behind her, laughter and music spilled from the yacht like champagne. Ahead of her, the city lights blurred as tears gathered in her eyes. She didn't cry because of Khalid's words. She cried because, deep down, she knew he'd just handed her the beginning of her next design, and it wouldn't be made of silk. It would be made of strength. Beirut at midnight was a city between breaths. The sea murmured beyond the rooftops. Neon lights flickered over cracked pavements, and the hum of life never fully slept. In a narrow alley of Mar Mikkel, a single window still glowed. Inside, Layla sat hunched over her sewing table, her fingers trembling over the fabric, the same ivory satin, the one Khalid had mocked her for. She stared at it for a long moment, remembering the laughter echoing from that yacht, the heat that had risen to her face, the way humiliation had tasted, metallic, bitter, unforgettable. Then she exhaled slowly and reached for her scissors. Snip. The sound was quiet, but it felt like thunder. That was the moment Layla began to rebuild, not the dress, but herself. Days turned into nights, and nights blurred into dawn. She stopped going to social events, stopped checking her phone. Her world became fabric and focus. Her studio transformed into a battlefield, spools of thread like tiny soldiers, sketches scattered like maps of her future. She studied relentlessly, watched master tailors online, ordered books from Paris about haute couture construction, practiced calligraphy strokes between pattern cuts, each one a meditation in control. Her handwriting on silk, elegant Arabic verses, became the soul of her designs. Where others saw fashion, Layla began to see philosophy. Every stitch was an act of defiance. Every seam, a reclamation. Every design, a quiet whisper that said, "I decide what beauty means now." Weeks passed. The once soft, hesitant woman grew into someone unrecognizable, her movements sharper, her eyes brighter. She no longer sought validation from clients who confused money with taste. Instead, she started posting her designs on a small Instagram page under a simple name, Layla Studio. At first, no one noticed. Then, one morning, her latest post, a flowing abaya embroidered with the words "I am enough," went viral. Thousands of women commented, sharing their own stories of shame and resilience. The message had spread, and they didn't even know the story behind it. One night, she stood in front of her mirror. The same mirror where she once examined every perceived flaw now reflected a woman of grace and gravity. Her body hadn't changed much, but her posture, that quiet dignity, made her look untouchable. The dress that once symbolized humiliation had evolved. It wasn't about size anymore. It wasn't about color or the laughter or revenge. It was about fitting into her own life. Paris, the city of lights, love, and tonight, reckoning. The Grand Palais shimmered under crystal chandeliers, cameras flashing like lightning across a sea of couture and celebrity. The air carried that electric mixture of perfume, ego, and anticipation that only Fashion Week could create. Behind the velvet curtains, Layla adjusted the cuff of her suit, sleek black silk, minimalist, powerful, no sparkle, no noise, just elegance that spoke in silence. Her collection, The Promise, was about to debut. 12 pieces, each one a chapter of her journey, from humiliation to awakening, from brokenness to rebirth. But the final piece, the 13th, that was her secret. It was the dress, the same ivory satin that once symbolized her humiliation, reborn. This time, it wasn't cut to flatter or conform. It was redesigned to liberate. Flowing panels of sheer fabric met structured seams, discipline and freedom dancing together. Across its bodice, delicate Arabic calligraphy shimmered in silver thread. The words read, "I am the promise I kept to myself." In the front row sat Khalid Al-Rashid, once untouchable, now weathered by scandal, his empire tarnished by whispers of corruption. He hadn't come for fashion. He'd come for escape. And when he saw her name on the show program, his chest tightened. Layla. He told himself it couldn't be the same woman. But when the first model walked out in her creation, his certainty began to crack. There was something defiant, something dignified in every stitch. Applause swelled as each piece graced the runway, layers of emotion disguised as fabric. Critics scribbled notes. Photographers leaned forward. And then, the lights dimmed. A hush spread through the hall. A single spotlight cut through the darkness. Layla stepped onto the runway herself. The audience gasped. She didn't walk like a model. She walked like a woman who had nothing left to prove. The dress flowed around her like liquid moonlight, commanding silence. Khalid's eyes widened. His smirk, that familiar, arrogant half-smile, faltered and vanished. He leaned forward, whispering under his breath, almost in disbelief, "Layla." She reached the end of the runway, turned toward him, and smiled, calm, poised, unstoppable. Her eyes held his for a single heartbeat, long enough for him to see the reflection of what he'd once mocked. Not fragility, but fire. Then she spoke, her voice soft but carrying through the stunned room. "You were right, Khalid. I did fit. Just not into your idea of me." The audience erupted in applause. Not for him, not even just for the dress, but for her. Cameras flashed wildly. Reporters whispered her name. Critics called it the most emotionally intelligent collection of the season. But Layla didn't stay to bask in the glory. She stepped off the runway, exhaled, and for the first time in years, smiled without restraint. Outside, the Paris air was cool against her skin. She tilted her face toward the night sky, listening to the applause fading behind her. She had come full circle, not to prove him wrong, but to prove herself right. The dress had never been the test. The real fit was her stepping into the life she'd always deserved. The show was over. But the world had just begun to see her. Layla stood beneath the glaring backstage lights, surrounded by stylists, models, and chaos. Flashbulbs exploded behind the curtains as the crowd poured out. Wasn't about the Lebanese designer who redefined elegance. Reporters were already waiting. Microphones, recorders, and too many questions. Her assistant, Miriam, whispered, "Layla, Vogue Arabia wants an interview first." Layla nodded, her smile calm, serene in a way that only comes from knowing the war is over. The journalist leaned forward, eyes shining. "Layla, that final dress, the dress, it's already trending online. But there's a rumor. People are saying it was inspired by something personal. Is it true?" Layla's smile barely wavered. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, choosing her words carefully. "Every dream needs a spark," she said softly. "He just didn't know he was lighting mine." There was a pause, a hush that told her words had landed exactly where they were meant to. Cameras clicked. The interviewer smiled, realizing she'd just been handed the quote of the season. Layla turned away before another question could follow. She didn't know anyone more of her story. Later that night, in her Paris hotel suite, The city glowed below, golden, alive, and uncaring. She stood by the window, sipping jasmine tea. Her gown from the show now draped across a chair like a sleeping memory. Her phone buzzed. A message from the concierge. "Madam, a delivery for you." Moments later, a bellboy appeared, holding a bouquet of pristine white lilies, Holland's signature gesture. No card visible at first, just the faint scent of familiarity. She unfolded the small envelope attached to the stems. His handwriting was still the same, confident, elegant, and rehearsed. "I was serious about the proposal. For a long time." She said nothing. The city kept moving beneath her. Traffic, laughter, music from a nearby cafe. Life refusing to pause for anyone's confession. Finally, she reached for her pen. Her note was brief, clean, measured, so as ISHE slipped it between the flowers, handed them back to the concierge, and watched as the elevator doors closed, taking with them the last trace of that old chapter. Layla turned back to the window, her reflection shimmering in the glass. Paris was vast and endless, a city of new beginnings. She placed her hand over her heart, feeling it steady, not racing, not breaking. That was the real victory. No revenge, no bitterness, just peace, earned, tailored, and perfectly fitted. The woman who once walked away from a yacht in tears now stood over a city that clapped for her name. Not because she proved him wrong, because she proved herself right. And as the lights of Paris blinked against the midnight sky, one could almost imagine the stars themselves whispering her final line. Every dream needs a spark.